Hi everybody, this is Gary Waite from Pegasus Battlefield Tours here in the UK, and you're listening to Your Papers Please podcast, the show that brings you some of the lesser known history of World War II. A big welcome back to episode 4 of Your Papers Please, and our continuation of Trooper Cecil Newton's story. At the end of part 2 we got to the end of August 1944. The closing of the Falaise Gap around the 21st of August was the end of the Battle of Normandy, which saw the battered remnants of the German army hightailing it back to the fatherland and the relative safety of home soil. By the 25th, Paris was in Allied hands. In this episode, the 47 Royal Dragoon Guards, along with 20-year-old Cecil in his Sherman tank, are moving through northern France on their way to help liberate Belgium and Holland. I'll let Cecil take over.
Well, as I said, that we were due to go to Bourg-Léopold and Oostum. But en route, we were to do a reconnaissance of Lille to see if it was defended. All I remember is going into Lille after taking the wrong road and landing up in the main square at Lille, and it was absolute bedlam. We had a new tank commander, and they really concentrated on him and started taking all his bits and pieces off him for souvenirs. And I remember they said, they went round that there was the Germans were coming, which they were in a part of Lille. And so the place cleared, and there was in next to no time, and the cobbles just emerged from their feet. And I remember a father and a small daughter. We had a German tin hat on the front of the tank, and she had taken the German tin hat. And as they were running away about the last, they dropped the tin hat. I thought afterwards, I hope that if the Germans went and found her with that, she'd be in trouble. However, next day we went south of Lille, just the one tank, to have a look round there. And we went up a road to a farmhouse, and we were parked on the road looking towards the main road, comes south of Lille, and the two men arrived, two Frenchmen, at a distance, and waving white flags to show they were friendly. And they came and stood beside the tank and spoke to the troop leader that there were Germans in the farmhouse up at the end of the track, the German troop. I didn't know what was happening. I was sitting in the tank. So we had lots of bottles of booze empty in the tank. So I used one of those to relieve myself and corked it. And there was a little hatch beside beside the operator. And I opened the hatch and pushed it out, but instead of it falling on the ground, it was taken by eager hands, and you could see the two Frenchmen walking away, admiring the label of the gift we had given them. I hope they enjoyed it. Then from there, we were heading for Oostum and Bourg-Léopold, but when we were having trouble with the electrics on the tank, and we were delayed whilst it was being fixed, and we were told to rejoin the main thrust afterwards. And we went, after it had been finished, they brought a starving German in, and they started taunting him, the infantry, and he turned around and kicked one of them up the pants. I don't know what happened to him or the people the French resistance who got him. Then we went into Oostum on the way, and as we were going into Oostum, an armor-piercing shot came from which I understood was from a self-propelled gun, missed us by an inch, and the young second lieutenant, who was completely bomb-happy, shouted reverse to the drive and tried to get out of the tank, but Ken, the gunner, grabbed him by the legs and pulled him back in, and the tank went back into a copse, and it stayed there. It couldn't go any further. So the troop leader, who was a very efficient person, got out of his tank and walked over to see what the problem was and told him to get out of it. And as we went past the troop sergeant's tank, the driver had got out and was waving us on to get out of ourselves. And when I spoke to him post-war, what had happened was that the troop sergeant with his pistol saw some German paratroops in front, got out to take them in, which was very brave of him, but there was about 6 or more hiding around the corner, and he had no chance with them, and they captured him. And while this was happening, another German climbed up the back of the tank, shot the Stan Moffat, who was watching proceedings with his head out the turret, and then threw a grenade into the tank. And the driver, who was waving us on, told me that he could hear from where he was lying, he was slightly wounded by the tank, he could hear John Hill screaming in agony and for somebody to come and save him. And he was only 19. And Stan Moffat was a Liverpool lad, and he was a regular soldier. It just shows you how the Germans operated. They set that trap, and they thought very carefully of what they should do and planned it. And that was what I came across the whole time during the campaign, was that they thought very carefully of how they would defend their particular patch. For instance, at Cristot, which was just soon after D-Day, the second in command went into Cristot to do a recce in the morning, and the crew member was telling me that there was no one there empty, except that there was a woman pushing a pram down the high street. So in the afternoon, it was arranged that they're about an attack at 4:30 down the track 102 to 103, which was very near to south, about half a mile or less to Cristot, and with the Green Howards, 6 Green Howards, and B Squadron with the tanks remaining, 9 tanks remaining. They started at 4:30, crossed the road that ran north to south. At the end of the road was an 88mm gun shooting down the road. Lined up, patiently waiting, was a full deployment of 12th SS, and at the end of the nearest of their trenches was a dug pit, which you can still see, where there was a Panther tank. And the regiment, the B Squadron, walked straight in front of it with disastrous effect to B Squadron, who lost the 9 tanks virtually. 1 got out of it, but had to tow another one out. And the mayor was telling me later that there were 2 tanks that had been burnt out. 2 B Squadron tanks were in the field for 2 years afterwards. Well, I was just saying that the Germans were very, very clever in their defensive pattern. Well, we went from Oostum up to Nijmegen, arriving at Nijmegen to get a marvellous reception. And then from Nijmegen we went to Arnhem. We went to Driel ourselves, B Squadron, which is to the west of Arnhem, and attacked down the Bund, or the protection wall of the river. But that was no good. We stayed there and couldn't get through. They dropped the paras opposite to us, the Polish parachute brigade. They were going to drop them south of Arnhem on the bridge, but they altered the directions and dropped them on top of a German unit that had been sent there to retrain and recuperate. Some of the Poles managed to get across. I spoke to one of them, and he said, "We cut their throats like this," and brought out a 12-inch long knife and flourished it underneath my nose. I was terrified. Well, the bridge at Nijmegen was captured by the Americans. The defense of the other side. They crossed it in boats, and then a captain met the Irish Guards lead tank, which was the troop leader was Carrington, who became Foreign Secretary. As you know, Arnhem was a complete failure, not due to the paras, of course, but the hopeless planning to it. And we got out of it lightly. 2 were killed at Elst. It could have been worse. But as we spent some time on the island, which was the place, the part of Arnhem that had the two rivers, north and south, and we decided to get back, try and get into Germany, south of Arnhem. We went down to Brunson, and after spending a couple of days down there, went into action to Tripstrath. Torrential rain, Sherman tanks with their narrow tracks. They nearly all got bogged down. We got bogged down. The driver, Cliff Ford, got out to see what could be done. I got out, and we tried to get a tow, but in the meantime, Ken, who'd already gone bomb happy, was standing there watching the operations. He wouldn't get out himself, but he got shot in the neck. It took his left epaulet away, button to his epaulet, and went straight through the side of his neck and out the other side. And there was me standing at the edge on the turret, dressing his wound and the thing. And I said how lucky I was that the sniper had got home for his lunch. Otherwise I'd have had it. Then we went to a farm overlooking Tripstrath. And again, Cliff got a door out of the farm, and we dug an enormous great trench. We all got into that and put the door over it, got the machine gun out, and we could hear the German tanks revving up and taking up position in Tripstrath. We went down first thing in the morning to try and relieve the Worcester regiment, who were trapped at the end of the north end of Tripstrath. Went left again, went right into the high street, and bang! The commander of our tank, corporal, said bail out. The operator had to duck under the gun to get out, and he had to be third to get out. The tank commander had to get out. He got tangled up in his lead. Then Ken, the gunner, whoever it was, got out. And then I was getting out, and with my right leg up on the rim, turret ring, and then the tank exploded, and my left leg was left to its fate. I stood on the top with my left leg waving about, wondering what to do, when a German, presumably, I didn't see very much, a German unit passed, and the officer, because he was the officer who stopped me, he had a Walter 765. If it had been one of the troops with a 9mm, it had blown, at that close range, it had blown me apart. But the bullet entered the small of my back and went through my chest and lodged just by my collarbone. And luckily it was a small caliber bullet from a Walter, a pistol. I flopped on the ground into the mud, pouring with rain, and again Cliff Ford rushed out of the house to drag me in, followed by Wolf, and the Germans lobbed a grenade over the tank and got them both in the legs, and they lay by the doorway. I crawled past, and one of the Buster Brown was in the house, and he helped me onto the bed and then fixed me up with the morphine. And then that was early in the morning, 7:30, 8 o'clock. And then in the evening, a Bren gun carrier came with a stretcher and put me on the stretcher and took me to hospital. That was the end of my career in the army.
Well, what an ending to a truly remarkable story. I trust that many will agree that Cecil has a very distinctive style of expressing his narrative. 20-year-old trooper Cecil Newton survived D-Day and later went for a bicycle ride along the landing beach. He survived the many ferocious tank battles in the Normandy blockade and the war of attrition in Holland, through the winter months in the island position, supporting Polish, British and Canadian parachutists, and then later the American 101st Airborne. He survived his tank being blown up and then being shot almost point blank by a German officer with a pistol. Truly outstanding and put across in such a mesmerising fashion. I wish to thank Cecil from the bottom of my heart for his contribution here. You are a wonderful man, and I'm so glad you made it through. Thank you. And I also hope anyone who has listened to Cecil's story over these 3 episodes has enjoyed it too. Thanks for tuning in. Yes, thanks for listening to Your Papers Please with me, Gary Waite. I hope you've enjoyed this podcast, and I look forward to catching up with you again soon. Please don't forget to subscribe so that you can be informed of all future releases. You can find me under Pegasus Battlefield Tours on Facebook and Twitter, and the website www.pegasusbattlefieldtours.com. Thanks everyone. Toodle pip.